are you running?
Last week, I released a video about this very interesting mechanic in Fire Emblem Awakening. Basically, while routing for support bonuses, I discovered that every character in the game is assigned one specific partner who they favor above everyone else. For example, Chrom and Sumia build to a marriage at a super fast rate. This is true for all of the first generation characters, mostly. Aside from Lon'qu, who is terrified of women, they mostly have one person they are inclined to marry. But what about Lucina? What about the other second generation characters? Well, I teased this in the last video already, but Lucina does have a fast support with exactly one partner, Laurent. I am almost dreading even talking about this one, but let's get it out of the way quickly. To be honest, there were only about 70 people who reacted negatively to the previous video, most of them on Reddit, and around 55,000 people who seemed to like it. So I'm not overly concerned, but still, this is Lucina we're talking about. She is among the most popular choices for the player character to marry, and a lot of people are very attached to Lucina as a character. Even discussing the idea that she has a potentially canon partner other than Robin is going to ruffle some feathers. But still, this is just the way things are. This is a gameplay mechanic, and this is how it works. I'm discussing it because it's an interesting quirk of the system. Lucina has exactly one fast support. It's interesting to me that the developers made this choice. You're free to draw your own conclusions from that information, but nothing will change how this support system works. Okay, let's start with Lucina herself. She has a limited number of builds that she can inherit. She's actually the most limited child character in the game, because the only way to open up her class set is by having Chrom marry Robin. Otherwise, she has a limited pool of classes to choose from. You essentially have a choice between a magical or a physical Lucina, but either version is going to be relatively fast and frail. She's offensively strong and makes a solid player phase removal tool. Now, I talked about this in the previous video already, but Laurent has a lot of potential, even in a no-grinding context, because of his ability to inherit both Dual Guard Plus and Dual Support Plus from his parents in their innate class lines, meaning Stahl and Muriel don't need to go out of their way to pick up these skills. If you combine this with the fact that Lucina is always going to have Dual Strike Plus, you can see how this trio of skills makes the pairing quite formidable. He can also very quickly grab Hex and Anathema without too much of a problem, and you essentially give Lucina a massively boosted ability to hit enemies, to crit enemies, to dodge attacks, to Dual Guard, and to Dual Strike. In addition to having basically the full range of support skills that you'd want a pair to have, these two characters clearly have a lot of respect for each other, and seeing their bond grow is really nice, even if they don't end up getting romantically involved. Interestingly, in the Future Past DLC, most of the female child units are split into Group 1, and most of the male child units are split into Group 2. However, Group 3 in the third DLC has Lucina and Laurent fighting together, along with Gerome and Severa. I won't talk too much about this yet, because I'm planning to make videos about the DLC in the future, but I thought this was a fun note. On that note, let's talk about Gerome, because, well, he does not have a fast support with Severa, so maybe the whole future past theory doesn't mean anything. After all, those chapters are more about the characters themselves, their relationships with their parents, and their role as heroes in the new future world. His fast support partner is Na, which I really love because if you watched the last video, you might remember that Gerome and Na inherit Wyvern access from their supposedly canon parents. I thought this was a cool detail because it shows that they have at least one thing in common. And actually, since they do inherit this from their mother, it means that they will always share this trait. Both of them will always be Wyvern riders. Jerome's Paralogue can be pretty scary, so he can be difficult to recruit. There's a bunch of green units that you need to protect, but they're all very far away, and the enemies will aggressively go after them. On the other hand, Na's Paralogue is similarly dangerous, but a little bit easier, I think, to make sense of. It's more or less just tedious. You have to spend a lot of time working your way through this huge horde of enemies slowly. The enemy quality is very high, and the map unfortunately has a gimmick where the doors open and close on their own, which can also slow down the gameplay a bit. The Gerome and Na support conversation was pretty funny. I think they are individually humorous characters, but they play off of each other very well to make the situation even funnier. Na's behavior in stalking Gerome also reminded me a lot of Saria, which is fitting because Noe and Saria actually have a friendship bond. Although Na's stalking behavior had a more playful innocence to it, which is a lot more similar to her mother. Next up, I want to discuss how all of this works. There were a few people who had questions about where I was getting this information, how to understand it, or what it means. So I figured let's discuss that as well while we're here. There are 4 different types of supports. First are your friendship bonuses. Robin is a good example because they can become friends with anyone, and all of your friendships build at the exact same rate. Actually, everyone builds friendship at the same rate with all of their other potential friends there's no difference in friendship bonuses. The main difference is that most of the other characters only have a few potential options. Frederick, for example, only becomes friends with Henry, Virion, and Crom. The Frederick and Virion support is pretty useful in the early chapters because archers are a good support class, and you can build them to a C support in just one battle if you really wanted to. Friendship stops at A rank, which is still a nice bonus, but the bonus you get from marriage and the S support is definitely ideal. The other three types of supports basically determine how fast you can get married. Most of the potential marriages build at a slow rate. This requires 2 chapters to obtain the C support instead of just 1, and 6 entire chapters to get married, but it also assumes that they're fighting together enough to obtain the maximum support in all 6 chapters. And that's not always a given, so it could easily take 7 or more battles. Some characters also have 1 or 2 partners that they build a faster relationship with. This one only takes a single battle to unlock the C support. It's very similar to friendship, which can be very useful in the early chapters to get increased support bonuses quickly. For example, Stahl and Sully can obtain their C support if they fight together in the very first chapter where Stahl joins. And while they do build a faster A support, they still require 6 battles at minimum to unlock the option for marriage. Lastly, and this is what the entire video is basically about, are your 1 true pairing options. Every character has exactly 1 or 0 partners who fit this description. There is nobody who has a canon marriage with 2 partners, which is why I found it so interesting and why I wanted to share it. These characters require only 5 battles to obtain the S support bonus and get married. Characters who join early on and share a super fast support, like Stahl and Miriel, have a huge advantage here. I hope that helps clear up what I'm talking about, and let's get back to the good stuff. Regarding Owain, I got a lot of comments about his parentage. Specifically, although Lonku didn't have a canon partner, people seem to really like pairing him with Lisa in order to get a brown-haired Owain. Although the game does give a super fast support to Vic and Lisa, it was certainly interesting to see everyone's feedback on how they played the game and paired their characters together. And I can't believe I have to say this, but these videos are not intended to be irrefutable scientific evidence that 2 characters must belong together. I simply just wanted to talk about a game mechanic that I found interesting, but I was surprised by the amount of reaction I got. Mostly positive and only a little bit negative. Well, I tried to respond to about 100 comments, but eventually I just got overwhelmed. So if I didn't reply to you specifically, I can at least tell you that I did read every single comment on the last video, and I really appreciated all of the feedback that I got. For the people who are still going to angrily comment on this one that Lucina has no canon partner, well, there's nothing that I could say to stop them anyway, but honestly, go ahead. Comments are good for the YouTube algorithm. Back on the subject of Owain, his proposed canon partner, if you follow this system, is Kjelle. With the evasion bonus from his innate Myrmidon class line, survivability from Soul, and access to the Great Hero class, he could make a very strong physical unit despite having a magical mother. The defensive Knight pair-up from Kjelle, who can also inherit or learn Dual Guard Plus, will help his survivability a little bit as well. I should also mention something that I missed in my last video. I thought that Kjelle did not inherit the Wyvern Rider access from her mother, but that's not actually true. I misunderstood the inheritance table because Sully weirdly and uniquely passes down 4 classes to her daughter, unlike everybody else who only passes 3. Owain's Paralogue is a very fun puzzle to solve. Trying to figure out how to rescue all of the sages before the enemies can wipe them out is actually a lot of fun. It's one of the few cases where I think that having green units on the map actually adds to the enjoyment and the strategy, rather than just being an annoyance. Kjelle's Paralogue is probably one of the easiest. You can use this map to farm a lot of experience. Keeping her alive can be a little bit difficult, but if you push forward aggressively and you're willing to use a rescue staff, she's fairly free to save, even on Lunatic Plus mode, and if you want to save a rescue staff, you could pretty easily still bust through the door and rescue her in time, just the old-fashioned way. Seriously though, don't be afraid to camp near these staircases and just farm the enemies who are coming out for free experience, especially if you can access this Paralogue early on, which isn't too difficult because you get Sully early as well. Along with the Gerome and Nog conversation, I really got the feeling that the characters in the second generation show interest in each other, like actual romantic interest, even before seeing the S support. However, there's one thing I want to point out here that stood out to me even more. During the A support and S support, Kjelle displays the ability to go invisible while wearing a special suit of armor. Now this heavily plays into what we determined in the last video, with Sully and Kellum having a very fast support line. Could it be that Kjelle inherited this cloaking ability from Kellum if he was her father? Well, regardless, if you plan to use Owain as a lead unit and Kjelle as a support partner, having Kjelle doesn't actually offer much as a father aside from a slightly higher defense modifier on Kjelle herself, which is actually unlikely to matter in the support position. However, funny enough, Kjelle gives access to the Sage class and Tome Fair, which could allow you to support a more magically oriented Owain. Remember that Vantage and Soul don't care if you're using magic or physical attacks. The Sage pair-up bonuses would boost Owain's magic stat, and Tome Fair would allow Kjelle to hit harder with her dual strikes. These fair skills are one of the few ways to boost the damage of the partner in the rear position, and honestly, more flat damage is never a bad thing. If you've played Fates, you already know about damage stacking. If you were going to look at other options and you wanted to make this pairing really good, I might recommend getting Owain access to Dark Mage. Because he starts in Myrmidon and he gets Vantage basically for free, he makes a solid Nosferatu user, just like his later incarnation in Fates. Next up, we have Inigo and Cynthia. Inigo will have access to a solid class set of Mercenary, Myrmidon, and Barbarian, regardless of who you choose as his father. He's also one of those male units who can inherit Galeforce from his mother, although, like I discussed in the previous video, it's pretty unrealistic to get Galeforce onto Olivia unless you're going out of your way to grind. Like, way out of your way. That being said, Cynthia will become stronger the more you invest into Sumia, and it is possible, pretty easy to pass Galeforce down to her with very little hassle. She could also learn it on her own eventually. If you see where I'm going with this, well, having two units with Galeforce paired up together with the offensive boost of having an S support is a great way to break through enemy formation. You can have Inigo fire off deadly attacks with Axe Fair and Cynthia dual strikes, then move again, switch Cynthia into the lead, and have her attack with Lance Fair, potentially Aether, baiting in dual strikes from Inigo. Axe Fair still boosts his dual strike damage. This is going to trigger Galeforce a second time. This allows the duo to reposition with Cynthia's boosted movement and flying to any position where you need them to go. This is an extremely strong strategy that only gets better as the quality of enemies increases, because you need to get rid of them while repositioning your units. Galeforce allows you to make aggressive plays without ending your turn out of position, and a double Galeforce unit allows them to eliminate two enemies while still retreating back to safety, and allows them to leapfrog further into enemy territory if you really need them to. I consider Galeforce to be one of the most efficient zero-cost removal tools for Lunatic Plus level play. And if you're interested in Lunatic Plus, I've made plenty of videos about that already, so go check them out. In fairness, in a grinding context, you could make almost any pair of characters into a deadly duo, but it's still nice to acknowledge the power of this specific pairing. Cynthia's Paralogue is a bit weird because of the way that the enemies approach you in groups one at a time, even though it seems like they're just going to overwhelm you all at once. The weirdest thing to me is that under certain conditions, the boss will just run away, and you end up losing the experience and the items that he would normally drop. It's happened to me before, and I can't even remember what causes this, so I'm probably going to have to look into that before I make my guide for this chapter. In terms of story, Cynthia is actually jealous and sad that Inigo keeps chasing other women, but she keeps these feelings to herself and is very supportive. She continues to openly encourage him, and she doesn't even reveal any of these feelings unless you unlock their S support. Because she prefers when he's in a good mood and when he's smiling, she goes out of her way for this. I was just thinking, what did this philanderer do to deserve such a supportive and kind partner as his fast support, or even as a friend? It reminds me of the Virion and Church relationship, so I can very much see what people meant about pairing Virion and Olivia together, because Inigo has a very similar personality to Virion. Oh, by the way, let's talk about Robin again really quick. Someone left a great comment which pointed out the imbalance between male and female characters, which I didn't end up discussing during the last video. But yeah, it's actually true. Because of the number of characters, there will always be some Generation 1 potential father who ends up as a bachelor instead. If you play as a female Robin and you paired everyone up, even by having Robin marry Lon'qu, there would still be one guy left over, for example, Donal. And with male Robin, this balance becomes even more irregular. Pair up all of the characters the way I discussed in the last video, and you still have Robin, Donal, and Lon'qu without a partner. Having said that, Robin is special because they have a ton of unique marriage options. They can potentially marry down into any of the Generation 2 characters. We already talked about how Lucina is a popular choice here, and in addition to that, they can also marry Flavia, Basilio, Tiki, Sayuri, Anna, even Aversa and Gangrel, and more. So even if you play as a male Robin with this imbalanced roster, the game is designed so that Robin can always get married no matter what. This might actually be the reason why these characters who only support with Robin, or later on only support with Corrin, were added to the franchise. It gives the player more options for their strategy game dating sim so that they can pair up all of these characters, but they don't ever get left out. Moving back to Generation 2, one of the discussions in the comments that I found a lot of fun were the potential fathers for Yarne. Along with Brady, I would say that Yarne is one of the characters that generated a surprising amount of discussion. So many people had opinions about which father is the best for him and who they used in their playthroughs. Possible choices were Donnell and Lonku, funny enough, showing that people on average really do factor in story and character to their marriages, rather than getting Galeforce onto every unit possible. Well, Yarne's super fast partner is Nowaru, and yeah, I'm going to say it like that. Last time we only got 20 comments making fun of my inability to pronounce French names, so let's see if we can increase that. I usually stick to the phonetic Japanese pronunciation when I'm unclear about something, although this doesn't mean that I have personally looked up the original Japanese name for every fictional character ever created. Pretty shocking, I know some people were surprised by that too. Because Yarne can never get Galeforce, it's typically a good idea to make him into a supportive backpack or a rally character. But unfortunately, he doesn't get any of the best rally skills or any of the best support skills from his mother. I guess he does get Axe Fair, which is something, but even if you have him inherit some skills and class access from Rickon, there are definitely ways to optimize this character a bit more, I know it. Nowaru helps out a bit here, providing Bowfair, Hex, Anathema, and Dual Guard Plus potentially along with other skills, and while she can't inherit Galeforce, she can get Pegasus class access and learn it herself. There's a lot you can do with this unit, she has so much potential. Frankly speaking, it's probably better to pair her up with someone else. Nowaru can be a potentially high-value unit with the right father and the right partner, and Gaius is coincidentally a solid option on top of being Saria's fast support. So everything just kind of works out pretty well. Now, if I remember correctly, Yarne's Paralogue is the one where you have a bunch of mercenaries. You can potentially get them to fight each other, or you can fight against both sides. Personally, I always fight against both sides so I can farm as much experience as possible. Even on Lunatic Plus, if you stay in the bottom left section of the map, you can use the city walls to funnel the units from the top and fight them pretty safely, and the terrain on the right-hand side will slow down the units coming from the right. You can send your Galeforce units out to remove the most dangerous enemies, and then pull your units back using Galeforce or rescue staves, and then let the less dangerous enemies fight your tanks on enemy phase. As for Nowaru, I find her Paralogue to be one of the most challenging ones. I don't know, I just always feel like I'm getting overwhelmed here, both in terms of trying to rescue her safely and like to keep all of my units alive and not have them get overwhelmed by the massive amount of enemies who are attacking you on two open fronts. Well, narratively speaking, these two characters share some common traits, like being afraid of battle, and while Nowaru does show more courage and agency, which ends up inspiring Yarne to try harder as well, I didn't find it to be a super compelling romance. It was my least favorite of the second gen super fast pairings. She says that she never reveals her super angry true self to him because she loves him, but to me, I feel the opposite way about love. You shouldn't hide anything from the person you love, and that person should be able to accept even the worst side of you. I'll be honest, I almost never find a way to use Yarne effectively in any of my playthroughs, so if people have advice or experience on how to make a build for him, I'd be interested to know about it. Morgan has the same support growth as their mother or father, but we can talk about them for a little bit, because unlike Robin, Morgan cannot become friends with everyone. So here's how it works. If you play as a female Robin, you'll have a son, and that's male Morgan. If you play as male Robin, you'll have a daughter, which is female Morgan. Male Morgan has a slow support with all potential Generation 2 marriage candidates, and he has normal friendship with Owain and Yarne. They'll also get a special conversation with their sibling, which is different from friendship or romance. Now, female Morgan is mostly the same, but there are some key differences. They have a slow romantic support with all potential Generation 2 males, so that's the same, and they can make friends with exactly two characters, Nowaru and Na. So here's the fun part. With female Morgan specifically, because of the way parentage works, if you have Robin marry either Noe or Saria, this can cause your daughters to get a sibling conversation instead of their normal friendship conversation. This can't happen with male Morgan, because female Robin can't marry Lisa or Pan. In a way, you actually end up missing out here, because it removes the unique friendship support and dialogue and replaces it with the same generic sibling dialogue that all of Morgan's potential siblings would get. Lastly, and this is even more strange, But because of how Robin's marriage works, all of these characters who can potentially become Morgan's romantic partner, not only can they be Morgan's sibling in a different timeline, but they're also all capable of either being Morgan's mother or father. This also means that Morgan has an unreasonable number of supports in the gallery, which can all have multiple different variations. Wow, alternate realities are pretty weird when it comes to lineage. Thankfully, the Morgan Paralogue can actually be pretty easy. It might look scary at first, but it's nowhere near as bad as it seems. The most dangerous thing are the flying reinforcements, but by the time you get this far into the game, you should be used to the fact that flying units can just appear anywhere on the map, run 10 squares into your army, and attack your units. So honestly, just open up the Fire Emblem wiki and get ready for what's coming. Lastly, I want to talk about the twin-tailed Tsundere of Awakening, Severa, and the other character who got a surprising amount of discussion, Brady. You might have guessed, with these being the last two, Severa and Brady do share a super fast romantic support. Both of them also have, notably, very annoying recruitment paralogs. I swear I go into Severa's chapter expecting to use around 3 or 4 rescue staves, just to keep pulling her back and stop her from running into the enemy rank. As for Brady, well, this is one of those chapters where you have to defend against enemies who are attacking you from 3 open fronts with almost no choke points to speak of. Oh, did I mention you're also trying to defend helpless green units the entire time? Anyway, their relationship is mildly amusing, although I didn't find it super romantic. They form a funny little club to exclude everyone else, and while on the surface, this seems to be motivated by Severa's feelings of insecurity, her fear that the others will reject her, it's later revealed that she actually did this because she wanted to spend time alone with Brady. My favorite thing about this support line, and the reason I still rank it above the Yarne and Nowaru conversation, is actually because of Brady. He is a very underrated character, so go check out his story if you haven't given him a serious look before. Don't judge him by his appearance, because he's actually a very deep, thoughtful, and great guy. In the end, even though Severa wants to spend time alone with him, he actually encourages her to try to expand her horizons, step outside of her comfort zone, and learn to interact with other people, because he knows this is what's best for her in the long run, even if spending time alone with Severa would be more comfortable, easier, and more enjoyable for him as well. From a gameplay perspective, we already all know that Severa is quite amazing no matter what you do with her. She has innate access to the hero line, a class that can independently function as a main carry without any other factors. She inherits a skill from her mother without needing to go down a separate class path, since they don't have redundant starting classes, and she gets access to the Pegasus and Dark Mage lines no matter what you do. Both of these class lines are build-defining and give her so many options. If she wanted anything, it would likely be Luna, Tome Fair, or Axe Fair. Getting the Myrmidon line would be nice too. As you can probably determine, she doesn't get any of these from a support partner, and while they would be nice to inherit from a father, they aren't mandatory. If you're willing to recruit and train her, she can be a decent to great soul tank with no other considerations. Brady can bring the impactful dual guard and dual support plus to this pairing or any pairing, especially easy to do if you use Frederick as his father. This is never a bad thing to have, and it's another one of those builds similar to Laurent that you can pick up with a no grinding context, because it's reasonable that Frederick and Maribel would naturally go down those class lines. Additionally, like Severa, Brady has no redundancy with his mother. He'll get Miracle and Heal Touch in addition to whatever she passes down, and he can even go right into Sage for Tome Fair. All in all, a great supportive unit, and both of them can reasonably work with just a little bit of investment. That is a great note to end the video on, so I'm not going to ramble too much longer. Thanks for watching, leave a comment, like, or subscribe if you enjoyed this. And for now, enjoy the rest of your day.